Hello everyone, Mike Lowe here, simsportsgaming.com, bringing you the next episode of SSG Baseball Digest. We are a out-of-the-park baseball league that has been running since 2015 in real time. That's simulating one day at a time, and we use the out-of-the-park baseball software, which can be found at outoftheparkdevelopments.com. There's a lot going on this week. I wanted to get an episode out here. It is Memorial Day weekend here in the U.S. We're still in the midst of the quarantine. Hence me looking awesome with my fake beard and unshoweredness. So just bringing you it full on this episode. It's more important than my shower today is getting this episode out for you, of course. So we have a lot to talk about. Let's start off with the very, very first topic, which is the approved relocation of the Miami Marlins, who will be moving to Vancouver at the end of this season. Nate Brooks has agreed to once again leave the Giants to once again join the Miami Marlins. He's the only GM in the league who's had multiple teams, and he's done it now twice. With the agreement that he will be moving the Marlins up into his own neck of the woods there, up in Vancouver, British Columbia. There's no nickname yet for the team. There's been a few that have been floating around. We have actually reached out to a few graphic designers because we want to get an actual professional logo designed, not just one kind of taken off the Out of the Park forum. So more on that later. There is nothing finalized yet. As soon as we know that more, we'll let you know. And again, we'll be discussing as a league, as far as like the leadership of the league, discussing things about like what's the market size, what kind of financial situation should the Marlins be in. One of the things that we do have finalized is the divisional realignment with this. So what you can see there on the screen, the highlighted teams are teams that are moving. We can start really with the Miami Marlins leaving the NL East and going over to the AL West. And all of these were based off of geography, 99% of it. That was by far the biggest deciding factor was geography. It made more sense for Vancouver to go to the AL West than it did even the NL West. So they moved there. That bumps Houston out of the AL West. And again, just looking from a geographical standpoint, it made most sense to move them to the NL Central, which is a division they're actually somewhat familiar with, having been in the division with a lot of those teams prior to MLB's last realignment, or one of the last. And that then moves Pittsburgh from the NL Central to the NL East. And what this does is it creates some really nice rivalries. Seattle and Vancouver are going to be a natural rivalry, it looks like. Houston, again, moves back into some teams that they're used to being in a division with. And then we get a kind of a Pennsylvania rivalry with Philly and Pittsburgh now being in the same division. So this wasn't necessarily like moves we were trying to do for competitive balance or anything like that. It was strictly based on geography. So while Vancouver still has to come up with their nickname and things like that, we have a lot to sort out. We have a lot of time. This isn't going to happen until the winter after this season concludes. And then Nate will be taking the Marlins, and we'll get them shifted over to Vancouver in game. So this means that we'll next year's season, 2021, will be the first one that we don't follow an exact MLB schedule. It just won't line up that way. So we'll be using kind of a game-generated schedule. So just something to keep in mind there. But I think that's good. I think we've been in, this will be the 7th year by the time this happens. It's really time. We don't have to completely mirror MLB forever and ever and ever. And that includes future expansion possibly. We've always had a pretty active waiting list with this league, so that's something that we've been looking at the last number of years. I don't think it's happening for next year or anything like that, but it is something we're definitely keeping in mind. So again, Vancouver's moving. That also, again, opened up a opening with the San Francisco Giants, and we have brought on Ryan Hetzer, who is pretty well known in the SSG community. He's known in the Scout Scoops community as well. Ryan has an actual podcast from the St. Louis Cardinals that is pretty active, and I was actually a guest on before with Ryden. And yeah, just a great guy. Ryan actually helps moderate my MLB The Show streams, and so we're really, really excited to get him into not only the league, but out of the park baseball. He's very new to the game, but the guy knows baseball. He's super passionate about it, and he's going to be a really, really good fit. He's a content contributor here at SSG, and he's just exactly what we're looking for. So if you're wondering, well, I put in an application, I have 10 years of experience. Well, I mean, show us what you can do for the league. That's what we're looking. We want to grow this league with more things like this video, articles like Jake in Atlanta has been writing, and just different things like that. I mean, these are things that we're prioritizing. We don't go off of a straight list. This isn't third grade where everyone gets the same size cookie. So We're doing things a little bit differently here, which I think is very, very good for the league and all of the leagues. Excuse me. Topic number two, as we move on, is really just kind of an open topic of just really looking around the league of leaders, kind of where are we at here. We're approaching the end of May. And again, this is really the time I've said it all year long where you are getting an idea now of what you have with your team. So let's just jump in and take a look around and we can start looking at some of the standings and leaders. And again, I know this isn't probably huge on your screen, but I can kind of walk you through it. But um, the Toronto Blue Jays have had a really nice surge here in the last 10 days or so. They are 7-3 in their last 10 games and now lead the American League East by 3.5 games. That division is slowly turning into a two-team race with Boston, who is currently the top American League wild card team there. And they're just 3.5 game back of Toronto. So Toronto and Boston really duking things out. We talked about the Yankees a lot in this division. Again, they're a team rebuilding. And then Tampa's, I think, it's a surprise team we've talked about who is I think, very surprised to see 11 games under 500. And Baltimore is a team that it could see them going either direction, right? They've been kind of bouncing around 500 or so. And we'll see. I think the rest of this season, certainly the second half of the season, as it approaches in about a month from now, is going to tell us a lot about who Baltimore is. And we're going to hear more from Baltimore's GM on this very episode. So stay tuned for that. I'll let him kind of do more of the talking there. We move to the AL Central. The Tigers, again, just a very, very dominant team in this league in the AL Central. They've continued the trend that was the real-life Tigers before Armando took over the team when this league started, and he's continued it, unlike, unfortunately, my real-life Tigers. Minnesota is still a pretty good team, but just barely over 500. And again, this is a division that Detroit's starting to run away with. But the Twins are 8-2 in their last 8 or 10 games, I should say. So they picked up a couple games on the Tigers in the last 10 games, and that's important. White Sox looking for their identity. Cleveland's just had a really, really rough run, 0-10 in their last 10 games. They are also starting to play a series against the Angels, who have the best record in baseball. And then we got the Royals there again, a team similarly to maybe Chicago and even Baltimore, trying to find what their identity is at this point. The AL West does have baseball's best record, as I mentioned, with the Angels. But look at the Mariners here, 7-3 in their last 10. And they are 8 games back, which is a lot, but they have moved themselves into a wild card position. So they have a 3-game lead over Minnesota for that second wild card. If playoffs started today, they would start on the road against Boston in the 1-game playoff. So Seattle is a team that's surging, and that's not a surprise. I've mentioned that on previous episodes that Seattle is a team that is to be reckoned with, no doubt. They're a really good team. Damon does a great job with them. They have always been a strong team. I think last year we only won the division by like a game or 2 or something like that, maybe 3, but it was neck and neck the whole season. So Seattle is a very good team, and we're going to talk more about Seattle also in the show. So again, it's an interesting team. So again, Houston, an identity crisis team perhaps, as is Texas, and Oakland, again, rebuilding, but hovering around 500. So that's nice to see. I think Oakland's maybe rebuild is going a little bit quicker. Moving to the National League, the Phillies, again, back-to-back World Series champions. No surprise, I imagine, that they are in first place now. But they're just 5-5 the last 10. I think the Mets are a really surprising team in this division. It's nice to see. I mean, they are a game and a half back of the back-to-back World Series champions here. So the Mets are doing a nice job. The Braves have been on a long slide, and again, we're going to hear from Jacob on this episode. But they're 2-8 in their last 10 games. The Nationals, and this is kind of like the division of teams that are sliding, right? So the Nationals 3-7, similar to the Detroit Tigers, have always been a really dominant team who's typically been at the top of this division year in and year out. But they have really slid pretty badly here in the last 10 games or so. And then again, the Miami Marlins in a rebuild, kind of in a similar situation to Oakland, though, that it seems to be that they're maybe performing a little bit better than you'd expect. Now Nate Brooks is back in Miami, and again, as they prepare for their relocation, this is a really important season for them to start building. So you want to try to time that up, obviously, and get some fan interest going in Vancouver. The NL Central has the National League's top team, and that's the St. Louis Cardinals. In the first month, maybe they were fluky. We weren't really sure what they were doing, but they're now proving 8-10 in their last 10 games that they are a team that's for real. This team looks really good. They've won 3 in a row. And again, they look like a legitimate team for sure. You have the Reds, who spent a ton of money and I think are probably a little surprised to be 8 games back. 27 and 25 isn't bad, but geez, for the amount of turnover they had and the amount of money and effort they put into kind of retooling the team this offseason, I think they have to be disappointed to be 8 games back. And it makes me think about the adaptability trait with some of these players. I think Cincinnati's a team that absolutely is pegged to have a better second half than they are first half. So I think the best thing for St. Louis is build out that lead as much as you can, because I don't think the Reds are going away. Pittsburgh, again, very similar to Oakland and Miami, I think are in a rebuild, and it's probably going quicker than we thought. And Pittsburgh may be more so than the other teams that we talked about in that regard. I think the Cubs and Brewers, again, looking for an identity here. It's tough to really say, but they're 12 games back in the division. But the Brewers are 7-3 in their last 10. So we'll keep an eye on them and see if they can start a little surge here. The Rockies, again, perennial favorites every year in the NL West. They have a 2.5 game lead over San Francisco. Both teams are 7-3 in their last 10. And again, the Giants under new management today, it'll be curious to see. It's really a perfect time to grab a team, right? They're at 500, so it'll be a really easy thing to track and see how Ryan Hetzer does with the Giants after joining today. The San Diego Padres, again, a team that's probably of all the rebuilding teams from last year have made the most progress, in my opinion. And it doesn't quite show in their record yet, but they are a team, they're only 3 games out from leading the division. They're only a game and a half back of a wild card team. Don't be surprised if you see the Padres in the playoffs this season, which is probably quicker than most of you thought, especially if you consider the history they've had with some GM turnover over the years. The Dodgers, another surprise team, but kind of in the wrong direction. 3 games below 500, but still hanging around. They're a tough team, and they've always been tough in this division. They're 5-5 in their last 10, but they've won 3 in a row, so maybe that surge is starting for them. And then Arizona, again, a team I think just finding its identity. I'm a little surprised that they are where they are, but really there's not a team in this division that's out of it yet. 7 games back is not completely insurmountable. We'll just have to see for Arizona. You look at the NL wild card, the Mets have a 3.5 game lead over the Reds. So those would be the two teams that would be in the NL wildcard game right now if it were to happen today. But then you have the Giants and Padres, a game and a half out respectively. Pittsburgh 2 games out, the Dodgers 2.5, and then the Braves 3, Nationals 3.5. So there are a lot of teams in the mix in the National League. It's not so much the same in the American League, where you only have really 3 teams that are less than 5 games back of a wild card spot. You have almost the whole division in the National League in that situation. So yeah, there's just kind of a quick breakdown of the different divisions. I wanted to just hear from a couple of the GMs that we talked about. We're going to first go to an audio clip here from Craig Jackson, who is the general manager of the Baltimore Orioles. So again, a team that sits at 26-27. Let's hear what Craig Jackson has to say.
Well, we're back to struggling on offense again. We got 14 runs in our previous game, but that was just an anomaly. Occasionally, the baseball gods shine down on us just like they do for every other team, and we can put up some big numbers. But more often than not, we are failing on offense. I've checked the numbers. In the last 5 series, we've outscored our opponents 82 runs to 62, but we're only 8-8. When we get up against a pitcher that's having a bad day, we can do some good things. But all too often we are struggling to put more than 2 or 3 runs on the board, and that has got to change. I am always, absolutely always, looking at ways to improve our results, because I'm far from happy bobbing along at 500. If we feel a batting order change might help us, or we want to try another guy, then we're going to do it, because we need to kickstart this offense. We might not get things right, but at least we can't be accused of not trying.
So again, that was Craig Jackson, the Baltimore Orioles GM. And again, just talking about the team's identity, right? Some of their struggles, what he's hoping to see in the future with them. Let's now take a listen here to Atlanta Braves general manager Jacob Poncer, who also had some thoughts to share about his team and where the Braves are at this point.
Hey everyone in the SSG Baseball League. Jacob here, GM for the SSG Braves. It's a beautiful day today. I'm outside here in Edinburgh, Pennsylvania, which is where I call my home. High over 80 degrees today on Sunday, May 24th. Things, however, are not so hot down in Atlanta, Georgia, where my Braves have lost 8 of 9 and they're a season low, 5 under 500. Things are not looking so good. Last season, before I took over, team finished about a couple games above 500. Definitely looking poised to compete for the season. However, I knew the offense would probably be a question mark. And unfortunately, even though we've got a great pitching staff, the offense has not been able to keep us afloat. We've got a couple of great pieces. Jake Lamb's a third baseman. He's 29. He'll be a free agent at the end of the year. And outfielder Steven Piscotty, also 29. He has a slugging over 630, I believe, right now. Big home run bat as well. He'll be a free agent after 2021 if he declines or if he exercises an opt out. So there's two names there that I will definitely be looking to add to the block if we don't turn it around in the next month or so. Other couple names, Ender Inciarte, a center fielder, obviously great defensively, hasn't hit a ton this year. He's also a free agent at the end of the year. And of course, probably the most popular name in Atlanta is Freddie Freeman. He had a good year last year, but this year he has not hit so well. And I think because of that, even though he'll be a free agent at the end of 2021, I think his value to us as a team is a bit more than he would be on a trade, since he's a fan favorite. So I think I'll be looking to hang on to him unless I got an overwhelming offer to a team who still likes his value over the next couple seasons. The bullpen, obviously bullpen pieces are always expendable for a struggling team. Starting rotation, I think, again, I need an overwhelming offer on any of those guys. Tim Cooney has been incredible, but he's got several years of control left, so probably not looking to send him off. I wouldn't say that we're looking to rebuild. I'd say we're looking more to build for 2021 and 2022 at this point. So send offers if you'd like any of those pieces. I don't think I'm quite ready to make a decision to go for a sale just yet, but again, mid to late June, if the team doesn't turn it around, if we're not looking like we're going to be competitive in the NL East, we'll certainly be looking to offload a couple of those big names.
So there you have it. That's again Jacob Ponser of the Atlanta Braves, really just even talking about potential fire sale happening in the next month here, month and a half with Atlanta. So we'll keep an eye on that. He mentioned Freddie Freeman, bullpen pieces that are expendable. So if you're in the market, again, some teams like to get an early jump on that. That's just something to keep in mind. But again, Atlanta, if we go back to the screen share here, they're not necessarily out of the picture by any means. They're 8 games back in the division. Then the wild card just 3 games back. So I think Jacob's right on in saying that it's just a little too early to know just yet what's going on. Let's talk about a topic I want to just briefly mention, because another thing that's happening around the league are contract extensions, right? You're probably starting to get these emails from players who are saying like, hey, I love my time in City X and I want to extend my contract. And I actually got one from Will Myers today and he's like, hey, I love it here. It's great. I would like to extend my contract for $51 million a year. That's not happening. So I thought that would be an interesting topic, because I know some other teams have mentioned they've had similar issues like that as well. And the topic is kind of like this age versus war situation. So let me jump in and tell you what I'm talking about. And I want to look at a player. Again, we didn't talk too much about the leaderboards, but we will talk about a few players today. And I want to use Miguel Cabrera as an example, just because he came up in my MLB The Show stream the other day. I used the Tigers there. And again, Miguel Cabrera is still a very, very productive player in our league. In real life, he's taken a significant drop. In my MLB The Show league, he's taken a drop. But here, he has still been really, really great, right? So, I mean, since this league started, he actually led the majors. He was almost a Triple Crown winner in 2015. You can see these numbers in red. He had an on base of 410, which led the majors, and a slugging of 566. His average was 316. So, I mean, this guy was super close to winning the Triple Crown. So that goes without saying. He had an excellent year, 29 homers. In 16, he had an OPS of 917 with 27 homers. So, again, a pretty similar season to 15, just not as good. He's starting to regress, right? You're kind of seeing it here. Now it's down to an 882 with 23 homers. But then look at this. In 18 and 19, 41 home runs each, 126 RBIs and 114 RBIs. His OPS shoots up even better to what it was, the previous 2 years, but almost up to what it was in 2015, where it was 923. And then last year, he had an OPS of 1.000. So that was better than the year he almost won the Triple Crown again, and almost as good as the year he did win the Triple Crown, which I believe, was obviously 2013. You can see it there. So absolutely remarkable. And again, he's on pace again this year to eclipse those numbers. And it's still very, very early, but he already has 19 home runs. We're about a third of the way through the season. So my goodness, right? So Miguel Cabrera is still pulling it in. And the reason I say age versus war is that in most leagues, I don't care what game you're playing, people get obsessed with like the young, new, hot talent. You got to get that young prospect. I better trade Miguel Cabrera because he's 37 years old. But not always, right? Now, you might be saying, well, he makes a ton of money. And you're right. $30 million for the next few years here. But let's just take this season for an example. He is projected right now, as I mentioned, to have an OPS that's one of the highest in his career. And so, okay, if he does this, if this season continues like this, he's on pace to hit nearly 60 home runs, which is unreal. And he is projected to have a WAR of 8.5, right? Now, if we just simply take a very, very simple calculation here, right? And we take that 8.5 WAR and you times that by, they usually say like one WAR is worth about $6 million. So if he's going to produce an 8.5 WAR season, he is worth about $51 million per year. So if you're thinking like, oh, that's crazy, I would never take a guy who makes $30 million. It depends obviously on your budget. I mean, some teams just can't afford that, and that's understandable. But again, 6 times 8.5 is $51 million. So if he can produce anywhere near that, he is a bargain for the Tigers, and he's been a bargain the last few years, even at age 37. So it's something to take into consideration before you just say, well, I got this new hot prospect. A lot of new hot prospects aren't worth a damn. They don't pan out. So it's something that I wanted to bring up and just kind of talk about that age versus WAR, because it's not always that simple of just like, well, this guy's old and he's expensive, he needs to go. I'm telling you right now, if Miguel Cabrera is available, I'm trading for him. Specifically my Angels. We actually don't have like a super strong first base situation. We have a couple guys we can rotate in who I like. Jose Martinez, even Ed Lee can play first base, but we don't have a Miguel Cabrera. Armando, if you ever want to trade Miguel Cabrera this year, I would listen. I think, again, the holdup for me is, and probably the rest of you, is, well, is he going to produce, 5 WAR-ish the next few seasons? And that's a huge question mark, right? So that's going to be the ultimate thing. But if I'm the Tigers and I fall out of contention, I'm definitely considering moving him, maybe because of that contract. And I don't think it's a bad move for a team to pick him up. Again, if you have a spot, and I'm trying to remember if can he play third base still? He doesn't have a rating for it, but he might be able to hold his own. He's got the arm for it. If you put him in there, he'd probably pick it up again. Because obviously in his career, he's played third. So, and we don't have the advanced metrics too much for that. But so anyway, that was just using one player as an example that I think a lot of people would run from. And again, especially because in real life, you hear like, oh, Miguel Cabrera is overpaid and this and that, and he probably is right now in real life. But this is not real life. This is our SSG baseball league, and those are two different things. And I think it's very important. And that question on the bottom there, who dictates an extension, a player or a GM? You do. The player can ask for whatever the hell they want, right? I mean, think of it like a kid asking for an allowance. sure, you can ask me for $100 a week allowance. You're not going to get it. We're going to negotiate. We're going to find something that works. But at the end of the day, you control those purse strings. Don't let a player rake you over the coals and hold you hostage and hold your entire team's budget hostage. That is not a way to build a team. So again, you control the purse strings. You control that extension. There are very few players who are worth. I wouldn't say there's no player worth crippling your finances, but there's very few players in a league, in my opinion, who are worth even risking kind of putting yourself in a disadvantageous financial situation. So be patient. Just because a player wants an extension, it doesn't mean you have to do it. We're a daily league. You have plenty of time to negotiate. I did not negotiate with Trout until the offseason last year, and he wasn't a free agent. We did it a year early. But same thing with Garrett Cole. We got him at the trade deadline. I didn't start talking about an extension. I let him sit it out a little bit. I knew I had some time. I knew many teams wouldn't have the budget to sign him, and we just were patient with it. He also wanted I think $45 million, and we ended up getting him. I mean, we wouldn't probably call it a deal, but we certainly didn't pay $45 million for him. So I'm pulling up here on the screen just to take a look. So we signed him to $33 million a year, but it was only a 4-year deal. He wanted like a 9-year deal, $45 million. Get out of here. I mean, that's crazy. So, we were able to do that, and now it's paying off dividends, even though he's been hurt here the last week. But he's got an ERA of .88 through 10 starts. I mean, what the hell is that? That's crazy. A WHIP of .63. So he's obviously been a really, really good fit for us. So again, just something to keep in mind, whether you're a big market, small market, it doesn't matter what size market you are. There's no excuse for making bad financial decisions with your team. And that includes being either too aggressive, or especially too aggressive, I should say. So again, just something to keep in mind as you start looking at those extensions and as they start popping up more. Okay, so the last topic I wanted to talk about is another player that has just been off the charts this season. Again, we looked at some really good statistical breakdown with Miguel Cabrera, but there's another guy that I want to take a look at, and I'm calling this the other McMahon, because when you see McMahon, myself included, you probably think of Vince McMahon, but this is the other McMahon here. This is Ryan McMahon of the Seattle Mariners, and we briefly talked about him on, I think, the last episode, or maybe the episode that didn't have audio. I forget. I know I've talked about him before on this, whether you heard me or not. And again, instead of Vince McMahon screaming at you that you're fired, I mean, this is a guy who's screaming you're hired. I mean, this is a guy you absolutely want to try to build your team around, especially with his basically league entry level contract still. Before we even look at his stats, just to give you an idea, he is arbitration eligible for the first time this offseason. He's looking at a 14.5 or let's call it $15 million estimate. They can probably get it a little bit lower than that potentially. But let's take a look here. So this is Ryan McMahon. I think last time I had talked about he was a trade that the Rockies made. So they got him from the Rockies back in 2017. And so, if we look at his stats here, again, he had never made the majors, right, until he was brought on here. Actually, I take that back. Yeah, sorry, that's right. So when they got him, he came to the majors and immediately produced. His very first season, he had just 321 at-bats, but he had an 841 OPS. Since then, he has not been below 900. He had 33 home runs 2 years ago, 39 last year. Here he has 15 this year. So he is on pace right now to hit probably close to 45 home runs. It is 45 home runs exactly. 165 RBI, so that's even more than Miguel Cabrera, who we looked at, and a WAR of 10.4. So if we apply our simple math again, he is on pace to be worth $60 million a year. That's like twice what I'm paying Mike Trout right now. So the interesting thing is Seattle is not necessarily a huge market. They're going to have this guy for a little bit longer, obviously, at the very least. But I would be shocked if they are not right now working on an extension with Ryan McMahon. I have no insider information on that, but I would be shocked if they're not, if they plan to keep him. He's only 25. If he was 29, I'd say, well, I'm going to take an arbitration year or two and see how he does, but I'm not going to sign this guy long term. But Ryan McMahon is a guy you probably want to sign long term, and a team like Seattle can get a discount by rolling the dice a little bit. It is risky. He could regress. We don't know. But there's really nothing here that tells us he will. He's a durable player. He's a leader. He's not going to cause any issues. The adaptability seems to be moot because he's adjusted very well to Seattle. And again, these are looking at commish ratings here, but he has done I should say the OSA ratings. But he has done an outstanding job for Seattle, and it's not a shock at all. He's tied for the league in RBIs. He's by far the highest WAR player, I think, in all of baseball right now. Where is hitter WAR? I'm losing myself here. I saw, yeah, so 3.5 for batter WAR. That is more than Maikel Franco, who has won the MVP, I believe, back-to-back years. So he is out-warring Franco. Just to put that in perspective, right? I mean, Ryan McMahon is having a hell of a year and really a hell of a career, and he's only 25. So what I'm trying to just quickly do here, kind of off script, is, since he's joined, and let's look at his last, the seasons he full on started, right? So you're looking at about 11 WAR, 11 and a half. Let's call it 15 WAR over 3 years, right? Is that right? 6, 7. Yeah, 15 WAR over 3 years. Let's look at Trout, and let's try to look at his seasons when he was the same age, right? So here's Mike Trout. So does it tell us his age season? I thought it did that somewhere. Yeah, here we go. So 25. So it would be like these 3 years, right? So Mike Trout. Okay, well, Mike Trout, never mind. I didn't look at this ahead of time. Mike Trout actually did. He had about 24 WAR, but still, to even put him in the same topic or to even kind of have a comparison just shows you what I at least think of Ryan McMahon. I mean, this guy is legit. Not only that, he plays third base, so a position that's really hard to fill. He is a guy that just is just an outstanding fit. It was a great trade for Seattle. I mean, I don't care who Colorado got. I don't even really care how those players are performing. We don't even need to look that closely. This is a great trade for Seattle. Ryan McMahon, I mean, can very easily be the face of the American League, if not SSG baseball here very, very soon. He's well on his way to doing that. So, again, just kind of goes to show having a good vision for that sort of thing, being able to anticipate how a player is looking in AAA, because he had never played in the majors until then. And it's sometimes scary to trade for a hitter from Colorado because you're almost expecting him to regress. And again, he was in the Colorado minor league system, but it's hard to know. It's very, very hard to know. And just imagine the stats that he'd be putting up with Colorado if he was still playing in Coors Park, or Coors Field. So anyway, so that's it for this episode. Just wanted to talk about a few of the different things going on. I want to welcome Ryan Hetzer to the league, who's the new GM of the Giants, as we mentioned. The Vancouver relocation, which is super exciting. It's one of the biggest things we've had happen in this league. And again, just looking at contract extensions, some other things that are happening for probably your team, where teams are standing at this point in the season, and lots else. So if you would like to contribute to next week's episode, I don't know when that's going to be, but you are always free to send me an audio recording just discussing your team. I would say try to keep them like under a minute. And try to treat them almost like a press conference in a way where it's like we have an official comment from the team. Something like that's going to probably flow the best in a show like this. So, but you can send me those right on Discord. That's what those guys did. That's what Jacob and Craig did. They just sent them. They recorded them, I'm guessing, on their phone. And that's probably the easiest way, right? Just take your phone, record it, and you can then actually upload that audio to the Discord channel. You can just private message it to me, and then I'll just save it and load it into the show like we did today. So, but that's it. Thanks for watching, everybody. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have comments or questions, let us know. But we are the SSG Baseball League, running since 2015. You can find us at simsportsgaming.com. You can follow SimSports Gaming on Twitter as well, and you can follow me on Twitter if you'd like at MikeLow47. But I am Mike Lowe. Thanks so much. I will see you next time.